They always quote him, I don't know how true that statement is, that if you say the wrong thing 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. So if every Nigerian journalist...
The propaganda minister,
is the one who says so?
The propaganda minister of Hitler.
Okay. So if every journalist who wants to talk say that the problem of Nigeria is corruption, if every member of civil society who wants to say something say the problem of Nigeria is corruption, if all our priests, whether Christians or Muslims, who want to talk either wedding ceremony or birthday ceremony or burial, talks about corruption, the feeling is that corruption is our number one problem. And my sister, look, we have done some local programs here. There was a time, because of the constitutional amendment, we interfaced with civil society. Yeah, we invited, I don't know whether any of you covered that program. We invited civil society people, and we discussed various things about this country. And any option, any key team, we now give option. Is it finance? Is it government competence? There's various parameters, including corruption, that made us to be where we are, or where we are not getting to where. You really see that none of the parameters that corruption was number one, not even number two. That is, even among the civil society people, if you call any of them and say, what is the greater problem of this country? There's corruption. But then when we break them down and ask various options, you get the stem and the detractors, and you ask. Some of them will get up to 4 detractors and ask, including corruption. Some corruption will come fourth, some corruption will come third. I can't even remember any that corruption came second. I think the coordinating minister of the economy and finance minister just told me, I think when we were in the US, about a study from the World Bank about the issues, the challenges of doing business in Nigeria. And I think corruption was the third. They asked business people who are doing business in Nigeria, what is the greatest problem in Nigeria?
What was the first and second, Mr. President?
Maybe if we leave there, you ask the finance minister. But I know one of the key things is access to finance. That's one of the key things, access to finance. I think infrastructure. I think issues of, first, I think access to finance, infrastructure is also there, especially power and so on. And corruption may be either third or fourth. I'm not saying it's not there. Please don't misquote me. I'm not saying we don't have issues of corruption. But that is not our number one problem. And what are we doing? Winning the war. Corruption is as old as human race. I remember, but I will not go to that. I remember when I was a deputy governor of, maybe I would have given you one of my pamphlets. I wrote about corruption. I spoke on corruption in Abuja here. Then you see that corruption is almost in everywhere. But so issue of winning war, sometimes people take common stealing as corruption. A thief is a thief. When you steal money, you're a thief. But what we are doing is to make sure that you don't expose public money for anybody to steal. We have done that in the agri sector, this issue of fertilizer procurement. That's one another area where billions of naira were wasted every year in terms of federal government buying fertilizer. The fertilizer was not even getting to the farmers. Even the one that would get to the farmers used to be adulterated with sand. We have stopped that using the electronic wallet. So issue of seeds, issue of other inputs like chemicals for herbicides or insecticides and so on, and seeds. There's nothing like corruption. So there's no money for you to steal again. We started also in the petroleum sector, though later the National Assembly took it and rolled all kinds of probe or no probe. But even before the National Assembly talks about probe, already we worked on it. In fact, the deregulation was to completely get out of that. But Nigerians will pay a little more, and people registered it. But of course, we tried a little. So there you have removed the corruption network. I would have eliminated it completely. That's why sometimes people say, oh, I remember somebody say, oh, no, those who are involved in petroleum subsidy, they are those who funded Jonathan election. If they funded my election, I want them to fund my election again. Will I want to remove subsidy? I want to maintain it, continue with it, so that they will continue to fund my election, or whoever I want to vote for. Right. So what I'm saying is that we are more interested in making sure that there's no free money for you to steal. But in terms of winning the war, this is the first time I said that, look, we have a legal system that we borrow from the English law. I'm not a lawyer, but what I was told is that it's better for 10 criminals to get away than for one innocent man to be punished. That is law. So if you go to court, they say you have to prove something beyond reasonable doubt. And if you have a smart lawyer, somebody will steal billions and hire the best lawyers.
And get away with it.
And get away with it. So I set up a meeting. I said, look, everybody talks about corruption in Nigeria. The courts must help. Because these matters are going to court. And until people are convicted, we will continue to, if you steal 1 billion, and you can use 100 million to get yourself out of trouble, you get 900 million. So you continue to do it. But if you steal money and get into trouble, then you will not. So I set up a committee where myself, the vice president, the head of the executive, including the agencies that handle corruption issues, ICPC, FCC, then the Senate President, the Speaker, the Parliament, and the Chief Justice of the Federation, President of the Appeal Court, and among the 6 geopolitical zones, we take one as the Chief Justice of the State. And we'll be meeting regularly to see how the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive can come and handle this so-called corruption every day. So the perception is high. It's not because there is no corruption. Yes, there is corruption. But we sing corruption in wedding ceremonies, corruption, burial ceremonies, corruption. Yeah, everything is corruption. But by the time you gather these people and you isolate issues, and you ask different questions, and you ask them, they themselves surprised, sometimes the corruption will come. So, taking the World Bank studies, it's not Nigerians that ask them to do. Because of this perception that is so high. Why is corruption, if you call the perception is so high, and the businesses are still rushing to Nigeria? And they were wondering, so they wanted to know why. And I believe as at the time they asked that study to be done, they thought that corruption would be the number 1. But they were surprised that corruption was either third or fourth.
There's a perception in the war against corruption, and that is that the big boys, those who have fat purses and can steal big, naturally have enough money to hire sons to fight their ways, you know.
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
They get away with it. And buy judges. Now, the problem is that the campaign against corruption seems to be skewed against the poor. Somebody goes with a knife, steals 10 naira, you charge him to court, he goes in for as long as possible in prison, and somebody steals billion and is walking the streets free. That's a major problem.
That's why I'm saying that is why I initiated this meeting. Because as a president, you cannot gag the judiciary. If you do that, the country will be in danger. You must allow the judiciary to be independent. Of course, here the Constitution makes it very clear. The Parliament is independent. Here with the separation of powers in Nigeria is almost total. There are some countries where there's a lot of presidential influence on the judiciary. But when you do that, yes, it will help you in solving some problems, like we're talking about corruption now. But the day that Mr. President will dictate to the judges the kind of judgment they will give, even if you solve that corruption problem, because we are all committed to solving that problem, but have so many other issues that it will backfire. First and foremost, the president is the politician. So whether directly or indirectly, if the president has those kind of powers over the judiciary, it will affect the country in one way or the other. So I will not also advocate that the president should control the judiciary. But the meeting is to make sure that they on their own begin to see the best way to do it. And to some extent, you know, this is the very first time that a number of judges have been disciplined. But nobody talks about that. In Nigeria, you hardly hear about a judge being sanctioned. It used to happen once in the blue moon. But now it's more regular. The National Judicial Commission, immediately their petitions, they are sanctioning a number of judges for giving judgments that cannot justify it. But nobody praises it. When government is doing well, they suppress it. Anything negative is blown out of proportion. But they are trying. And I believe if they continue the way they are going, even some of the so-called big people who are taking big money, they will pay for it.
You see, when we talk about corruption...
No, just before you go ahead.